Hello and welcome to CS230 Web Information Processing. And welcome to this short series of lessons on CRUD-based access of a NodeJS REST API using jQuery. This is lesson 2, where we look at the front-end development using jQuery. I'll move to the app that we saw in the first lesson, where I was able to create some nice forms using frameworks and Bootstrap frameworks and form builders in order to be able to access REST API, and we'll look at that a little bit later, that's running on my service. Here, okay, it's a Node.js application, and it's running fine, and this mimics a database. It's actually an in-memory database. It doesn't make any connections yet, but I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. And we've already seen how to build the forms and how to use those forms, and the data gets passed. So the question we ask ourselves now is, how do those data get from the form across to the service? Well, we do that using jQuery. And what jQuery does, or what jQuery is doing here, is that when I type in all the information in this form and I click this button, we're essentially attaching a handler to the click button. So instead of with normal form processing, when we submit the form, the information gets packaged up and it's sent off to a form processor. Here we have an event handler which is written in jQuery, and it traps that button and it processes the form by extracting the information from each of these fields and packages it up in a way that we can then send to the service and have more control over that service. And we do that sending using Ajax. Okay, so and same thing happens here. When we get the user database, we're essentially clicking and submitting this form. There's no data here. Well, there is data here, but we don't use this data. And all this does is it harnesses the or catches the click, if you like, with this event handler, and then it makes a call to retrieve something, and then we update the contents of the form. So again, the call is made using jQuery, and updating the information in this field is made by jQuery as well. So we already saw the form for this one here, how we built it. We already saw the form for this one in the index.html document. So now let's have a look at that part of the document which really is focused on the jQuery. So again, we're going to use jQuery, so don't forget to include jQuery as a link, at the top of your application, your HTML. This is my index.html file. So that's fine. This is just a header. There's some notes here for you on how everything works. Okay, this is the Bootstrap style form that we saw to take in the information. This is the form as we saw already. It allows us to be able to pull out the information, auto-generated, and then again the information was updated manually. So we can see, for example, that, let's go back up here again, we can see that this form had an ID first name, its name was first name, it had a placeholder called first name. We saw there was a label for first name, and we use these names here so that they can be accessed by the labels. Okay, so we understand that. And also the name is used in order to be able to access the form element using jQuery. So, and we have these IDs as well. Okay, so that's perfect. So IDs, of course, will be unique in the page. And these are the form data, essentially, here with name. And we have our submit button. And submit button doesn't really do much. We haven't told it to do anything. Really, we want to trap this submit using jQuery and don't allow us the form to actually try to send the information to the server and transfer control that way. We don't want to do that as the normal way. Okay, this is the Modal. We talked a little bit about Modal. We use w3.css for this one. And now we're looking at the jQuery scripts, okay? And you can look at using Ajax with jQuery, of course, and the whole point of using Ajax is that we can make calls to a server, get the content and take it back into the form, into the page without updating the page. So this allows us to build these single page applications. And of course, there's a nice tutorial in W3 Schools here on this kind of stuff on jQuery. Okay. So, everything kind of starts with this document already. So this starts and kicks off as soon as the page is loaded. And when that's done, we actually add a form handler for the submit button on the add user form. Okay, and all it does really is it gets the user information, creates this object here, first name, surname, and email, and it pulls the information from the form. Okay, gets the value and pulls it from the form here. Okay, then it makes an Ajax call, and this is a post request, and we're calling the user, the local host 8000. Remember, our software is running in this port, and we're using a route called API/user. So it allows us to be able to send a post request, and we typically use post requests with with creation of database objects. That's the CRUD, so C is associated post, and we make the call to this root here. And when we're done, we actually just reset the data. So we could not reset the data, but as soon as the call has been made, we make that, okay? And then we actually show the modal data, because data is returned from that service, and we're able to, we have a little JavaScript function that's written here to be able to do something when the data has been returned, when we had a successful API call using Ajax, and it called a form called show modal data, and show modal data really just creates a modal, updates the data in the actual modal that's displayed, and that data was the name that was passed from the form to the service and then back again, okay? And then we're able to display this, and then we show the modal, and then it's up to the modal itself to close itself. And we could see that when we move up to the modal, that we had that when we clicked the modal, it actually hid itself. So the modal shows or hides depending on how it's controlled. And of course, the final part, of course, is that we want to prevent the default action from when you click a form button, a submit button, okay? So because the default action is to go to the form, okay? So it takes your browser to this new URL that processes the form. We don't want to do that. We don't want to trigger this, so we stop that. We say that with the prevent default. So that's how it happens with the click and the submission. So we handle the get the user database submit button. It's simple again. Now we make a get request, and again we're making that get request to the server that's running on port 8000 to this root /API/user, and we're essentially CR create retrieve, or we use get request to request the information from the service. And when we make the request, the server just sends us all the information, the data. And really what we expect to have here is that all the information is sent back to us in some form of JSON. So it is, we stringify the data using the JSON.stringify here, and we format it using this data. Sometimes you see JSON.stringify data, but there's an option where you can use /null or null, 2, and it makes this nice formatted JSON. And what I've done then is I've created a trigger on that. This is a funny bit. This is a fun bit here. I've created this trigger on the text area so this updates the text area with this data, and then I create a trigger, an input trigger. So when we have this input trigger, I've actually created this event handler for the trigger here, so that when we receive input, we actually re-scroll and resize, and all that does happens here. And I have a nice explanation here, some fun jQuery. And you do a little bit of Googling and figure out how to do this kind of work yourself if you like. So this is just for fluff. It's not functional or core to it actually working. That's it. Okay, so that's the full front end for this here. We have forms, we have form processing using jQuery, we have Ajax using jQuery, and we have a little bit of styling as well, a bit of fun in terms of with jQuery too, and we have all of our CSS styling using both Bootstraps and tree.css. Okay, so that's the end of the second lesson. Thank you very much for watching.